Hey, off-season After Dark fans, welcome back to episode 45. And today we dive into another ACC program. We have Kenton Gibbs here to talk NC State Wolfpack football. So, Kenton, as you guys may know out there, you're the regulars that see me with Corey and Steve. He does Locked On Wolfpack for NC State as well as Locked On ACC. So, Kenton, what got you into the space? How long have you been covering the Wolfpack, and what got you supporting that fan base and team?
Yeah, so I played for the Wolfpack as part of Coach Doeren's first recruiting class, and immediately after I was medically retired, I knew that the coaching route wasn't for me. You know, all of us football players, we have the itch to be around the game some way, somehow, regardless of how old we are, regardless of what's going on. We always get that itch. And for me, the proper scratch was the media side of it, because, I get to be, quote unquote, non-competitive in doing what I do. I get to talk about what's going on. I get to have a good time with it and all that, and for the most part, I don't get my feelings too involved, even though right now I want to leave the show because you got the Marshall Thunder and Herd flag in your background.
Well, so I work at Marshall now, so I'm in my office on campus.
We want Tony Gibson back. We want him back. So if we gonna have it be disrespectful and you just flaunting, look, I got one of the best defensive minds in college football. Where's your boy? We could keep it that way. No, I'm just messing with you.
No, I know.
I've been covering the Wolfpack since literally the day I stopped playing, and it's been great. It's been great. There's been some high highs. There's been some low lows. Obviously, everybody wants to see Doeren raise the roof and finally get that double-digit season win, which NC State has only had one of in program history. And so, realistically, Doeren's done a great job bringing stability. This program has done a great job of just being steady Eddie, 8-9 every year, steady Eddie. The problem is, at some point, again, you just got to raise that roof up just a little bit. You've got to pump it up just a little bit. You look at last year, you had the opportunity to do that if you beat a Virginia Tech team that looked like a rudderless ship, that a team that had no head coach, no identity, and you lose to them at home, and everybody's kind of stunned and sitting there saying, what happened? What was this? So, I've been covering this team for quite some time. I've seen some wins like the last second, I believe it was 14 points in 26 seconds to beat the Dirty Foot Club, also known as the University of North Carolina, right down the street. And, I've seen moments that were absolutely exhilarating. The double OT win against Clemson a few years ago. And you've seen some absolutely gut-wrenching ones like that.
The Georgia Tech win was massive last
year.
That
was big time. That was big time. And coming into the game, Grayson and I said, this is a game that Virginia Tech's run defense is malleable. And that was before we knew Hollywood Smothers wasn't playing. But even still, Duke Scott puts up 200 in that game. So, it's been a great time. There's been some tough moments like the senior night loss to Boston College a few years ago where Zay Flowers basically played 1-on-11 offensively and still found a way to win that game for the Eagles. And there's also been some great times like the monsoon game against Notre Dame that, Bradley Chubb is immortalized in NC State history for sliding through the end zone like a penguin.
That's one of the few things I remember about that game is that slide. But I was curious because I saw the year you played at NC State, and I wasn't sure if you were Doeren or O'Brien.
So, I was Doeren's first recruiting class, and so, he was recruiting me when he was at Northern Illinois. And my mother always told me to, even when you're saying no, be respectful about it. And so I told him respectfully, I'm not leaving the state of Michigan to play in the MAC conference. If I'm leaving, I want to be in a power conference. And when he got the job at NC State, I got a call from him saying, hey, I know you didn't want to leave the state to play in the MAC, but how do you feel about the ACC? Because I had some Big Ten offers and whatnot, but I didn't want to play against any of my high school teammates. And Cass Tech is a football powerhouse nationally. So a lot of our guys stay close to home, stay in the Big Ten, and I love those guys too much. I just didn't want to play against them, so I found my way on down to the ACC.
Did you play with Vern Golston in high school?
No.
Vernon Golston. How old
Vernon
was he?
Golston was way before me.
I wasn't sure when he was there.
And I honestly, that's my greatest claim to fame. Playing at the same school as Vernon Golston and yet being the all-time sack leader is my biggest thing whenever my kids come up to me
Yeah.
one day and they're like, "Dad, you wish you were more athletic," I'll tell them there was a number 2 pick that went to the same school as me, and he did virtually the same thing as me. I just did a little bit better statistically, just a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah. I wasn't sure what, because I saw the cast second, I'm like, that's Regault, but I didn't know what years he was there, or how.
He was a few years before me. I want to say he was gone 3 or 4 years before I got there.
Gotcha. I know the one guy the only one I remember, this dude was my age, like high school eyes, Joe Barksdale.
Joe Barksdale. Yeah. I played with his little brother, Dalton Barksdale, and their youngest brother came along when I was a senior. He was a freshman on the team. So yeah, the Barksdale boys had a great reputation at NC State. Even his little brother Dalton went on to play ball at Buffalo. So yeah, they made some big fellas that could move some furniture in that Barksdale family.
Yeah, for a couple of years I was a grad assistant at FCS Northwestern State, and several of those guys had been at LSU, so they knew Barksdale. And I remember they talked about when you have some freshmen coming in, not everybody wants to change positions and switch, and it can be tough. But they would use him because they said Joe originally came in as a D lineman, and we made him a living by moving him to an offensive line.
Yeah, he played in the NFL for quite some time. He got himself. I don't think he got never work again, and your kids don't got to work again money, but he made money where he was comfortable. Okay, he was good.
Oh, that's good. But yeah, let's slide into Wolfpack a little bit. So one thing you would mention, you talked about that raising the roof thing that Doeren has to do, and just take that next step. I said almost the same thing a couple weeks ago. I was talking to a guy, and I said it's interesting that in that ACC you have both them and Pitch is kind of in the same boat with Narduzzi. Stable for a long time, just very rarely they've hit that next step up. So, this year with looking at the pack, I mean, you have to feel like this could be a year with a lot of problems. I mean, CJ Bailey, there aren't going to be many better QBs in that conference than him. He looks like a really good player. Replacing Smothers would be tough for anybody. But Duke Scott's a pretty good player.
Of course.
Yeah.
So Oh, no. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what the path to double-digit wins.
Yes.
What does that look like? What has to happen for the Wolfpack to get to 10 wins?
It has to be something that Doeren has never done, but this is something that needs to happen this year. You have to win every single game that you are favored in. Every single one of them. Yeah. Every single one of them. When you look at that schedule, there are 2 games, that I say you might be an underdog. Maybe. I give you Vanderbilt. I give you Louisville.
Yeah.
That's it. Look at the rest of that schedule. You got a schedule that avoids SMU, avoids Miami, avoids, I believe, Clemson. And on there. You're avoiding all of these teams. And now Duke's been a thorn in your side. Well, you got to beat Duke without QB1 and wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
And one of their best safeties who could have came back, transferred out to Ohio State, I believe.
Yes, he did.
So you're sitting here saying, what is it going to take? And I'm telling you, it's going to take, it's the old phrase, to do the extraordinary just means doing the ordinary extra well. This is a team that has to be locked in and consistent every single week, because when you look at this schedule, you don't see the 1985 Bears on it.
No.
You don't see the Saban-led Bama teams on it, where you're like, oh, if I throw a rock in that huddle, I'm more likely to hit a future All-Pro than a future accountant. That's just not what you're looking at with this schedule. And so this team has to go in and just beat the teams you're supposed to beat. We talk about last year and what last year looked like. If you win that game against Virginia Tech, I believe that puts you at 10 wins in total for last season. But again, that was a really bad team.
It was.
That was a horrible team. And for reference, in terms of how the push and pull of the Jekyll and Hyde of NC State kind of shows up, you beat a Virginia team that beat the brakes off them, but you lose to them. That's what kind of, it is being a fan of the Wolfpack sometimes. So normally if we're talking about Doeren raising the roof, normally I would say you need to have just 1 or 2 games where some guys go legend, where somebody does something. If you think back to that double OT win against Clemson, you look at a situation where Devin Leary went legend in that game. He did some things that's just like, you don't have 15 other quarterbacks in college football that will play at this level consistently. You just don't.
Yeah.
And then if you look at beating Clemson after that, you see Peyton Wilson doing Peyton Wilson things all over the field. He was everywhere that game. Had a pick 6, had a sack, had I want to say double-digit tackles and all that good stuff. You had to have these spectacular performances. This year, that's not the case. This year, I don't see any game where I'm saying, CJ Bailey, you have to have a Heisman moment or they won't win this game. In terms of every game outside of, and really, if I'm being quite honest, including Vanderbilt and Louisville, I don't look at those games and say there's no path for you to win outside of CJ being a top 5 quarterback in America on that Saturday. I don't see that.
I think it's well said. Yeah.
And so with that being said, it's about consistency at that point. It's about what's your countenance, what's your attitude to doing the little things day in, day out, being focused day in, day out to get the best out of yourself and be the best team you can be. Because while this schedule is very malleable and there is no team on here that NC State cannot beat in terms of their schedule, there's also, I'd say there's only 3 to 4 teams where you really, unless something catastrophic happens, you're going to win that football game. The rest of them, those teams can beat you, and we've seen it. Yeah. We know how much this team has struggled with Wake Forest consistently. It's been a thing. Yeah. It's been a thing. We know Duke has been a crawl in NC State side for however long. When you talk about the Dirty Foot Club, yeah, we got a 5-game win streak, but that's a huge rivalry. Throw the record books out.
Yeah.
Throw the record books out. You say what you want about Bill Belichick, and maybe he won't be there. Maybe, who knows? That's still
it's still a game everybody on that field's going to get jacked up for.
Hello? You're going to get your best version of them. This is, as much as they say, oh, this is NC State Super Bowl. Well, guess what? Eventually, they're going to get tired of getting whooped on. It's going to be their Super Bowl too. So, you have a situation where you can win a ton of these games. It is possible. But it's also possible that you sleepwalk into a couple of these games and JKS catches you slipping.
Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned that team. Wake Forest is not a team I would want to sleepwalk on because I think Jake Dickert's a pretty good coach. And now with Gio Lopez being there, I think they're going to be a decent football club. And that first game of the year will be interesting. Were you planning on making the trip to Brazil before
Absolutely.
Cancel there. Nice.
Absolutely. I was 1,000% going to be in Brazil for that game. And when it got canceled, it was just like, all right, well, I guess we're going to Charlottesville instead, a little less scenic, but just as hot and swampy, I guess. So, it's going to be a great time up there. But, was it safety reasons? I wasn't able to find a legit reason why they decided to move it back to America. Yeah, so I haven't heard anything officially. And I want to make that clear. This is not coming from Locked On Wolfpack. This is not coming from Locked On ACC. This is not coming from Kenton Gibbs from I've heard this officially standpoint. This is speculation. This is what I was told by sources close to both programs. What I was told was the ticket sales just were not there to make this make sense for all parties involved. The logistics and all that, the reality of college football, and you probably know this because of how long you've been around it, there are people that make anywhere from, if you're a cheaper Power 4 program, $70,000 to upwards of $150,000 to $200,000 a year just to plan out logistics. Who's going to stay where? Who's going to practice where? Hey, coach, these are the options of the fields that are near here. There are people who make very good money, very good money to do that. So when I saw the things about logistics coming out, I put in some calls and said, what's going on? What's this I'm hearing about they don't know if they can ensure that this happens safely, And what I heard was the ticket sales weren't where we wanted them to be.
Okay.
And the thing that surprised me about that was of all the teams that you could get where hey, not only am I going to ask your fans to travel, I'm going to ask them to travel not just out of state, not just out of country. I'm going to ask them to travel to another continent. Virginia football ain't one of them.
No.
It's just not one of them.
No.
I was there in person for Virginia and NC State last year in the Carter. With all due respect to that team, with all love to Tony Elliott, he has done a fantastic job given what he has had to go through.
Yeah.
That is completely unique, that no other coach in the history of college football has had to deal with, which is kind of endemic of some other things going on in this country, that one thing then trickles in to football. But that's another story for another time. He dealt with that and had a 10-win season and ended up in the ACC championship. Two things that Doeren cannot say that he's done. So I give all love and reverence to that team. The fans do not travel. They may show up in Virginia Stadium. We all saw the Florida State upset and how, the fans rushed the field. And it was a great time. They need to travel like that to every game because this team, that Virginia team deserves it, but they just don't. So to hear that they want them to go to Brazil, I'm just like, oh, okay, well, they know what the deal is there.
Playing a marquee conference game when you have to make a 10-minute drive from your apartment is one thing. They haven't sustained success long enough to get their fans to. I mean, they've had one good year. Last year was the best year they've had in 15 years.
Of course.
You're just not going to travel that far.
But there are always going to be certain programs, regardless of how bad they are. Those folks are going to travel, right? Like, for example, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I grew up in the heart of Big Ten country. Michigan State ain't always been good. Michigan State always travels. They always going to travel.
Yep. Iowa and Nebraska going to travel everywhere.
Oh, Nebraska. Boy, when I tell you Nebraska is going to travel, they tell. When they joined the Big Ten, I didn't know. I knew the history of Tom O'Brien or Osborne.
Tom Osborne,
and those and that 95 team and all that and how good, some of those guys were with Amon Green and Phillips and Scott Frost, all that. I knew the history of how good they were. I didn't know how passionate their fan base was until they joined the Big Ten. And then seeing how they conducted themselves, I'm like, every game they sell that stadium out. Yeah. And granted, I get it. It's Nebraska. Ain't too much else to do there. Yeah. But that team is one. They could be terrible. They could be 1-11. Next year, guess where all those fans are going to be? If you say we playing on Mars, all of those folks are going to trade in their corn hats and turn into astronauts to go to Mars to watch Nebraska play in person.
Absolutely. No, that's it. And nothing against Tony Elliott. They were great last year, but Virginia's just not. They're not there yet. That the game is still week 0 and it's in Charlottesville, correct?
Right. Correct. Both of those are correct on both counts. Yeah.
Okay. So it's an odd looking at your guys' schedule after that because you have 2 different stretches of 3 home games in a row. Right. You don't see that too often.
Not
you guys have, you're at Virginia, Richmond, at Vandy, then App State, Louisville, Wake Forest, home in a row, at Stanford, then Cal, Duke, Syracuse, all at home in a row. So that'll be, that's an interesting one.
The most interesting thing I think about this schedule, and most people don't realize this, I want to say this now. This is not something that I hope happens. This is not something I look at and say it's likely to happen. Some of these are likely, some of them are not. But what I will say is this. When I look at NC State's schedule, there is a very real world. This is a very plausible thing where they have to play 3 games down the stretch with teams that do not have head coaches. With as much as we love Fran Brown and as much as, he had success in year 1, you can't tell me that your quarterback going down makes you as non-competitive as they were down the stretch. Yeah. You cannot.
We talked about that in our group show last week, and it's
exactly. Yeah. Florida State with Mike Norvell. Yeah. Everybody knows when a coach gets fired in college football, if it happens in season, they generally want to do it going into the bye week. What is Florida State's schedule going into their bye week? Virginia.
Is it the 14th, the week before that? Okay.
Miami. Yep. Virginia, Louisville, Miami. It's very real. Yeah. Bill Belichick's old lady or young lady, because let's be honest, is doing a FOIA request on the university to see who's saying her name.
Oh gosh.
I
didn't know that. Yeah.
I wish I could make this up about it. Listen, I enjoy when that team is bad, but I can't. If I could be this good of a writer to put up some stuff like that, I'd be working in Hollywood already. You hear me? Yeah. I'd be raking in the big bucks, doing Oscar goals, sitting there. Oh, me and Ryan Coogler, we go way back. He's a great friend. I called up Michael B. Jordan. I said, would you like to come over here? And that's what happened. But the reality is there's a world where NC State has 3 teams down the stretch where they're not going to have head coaches. And then you look at all the rest of their schedule, you have objectively just, again, if I was to tell you win or toss up or loss, I don't think that anybody would go more than 2 losses. And the rest, you got a good amount of toss ups. You can't tell me that Cal is head and shoulders a better team. No. Tosh Lapoy is kicking in backs on the recruiting trail. Yeah. He is, for what Cal's normal recruiting is, punching way above his weight class. He deserves all the respect and love in the world for that.
We talked about him. So last week I had a UCLA guy on, and we talked about him a little bit.
Yeah, but it's not going to pay dividends in year 1.
No.
You're not going to see a team in year 1 with depth that's that meaningful. Stanford is Stanford. I don't know who gave all that money to Stanford football. It kind of feels like the Mets having one of the top rosters in baseball.
It does. It's a good comparison. It's like, and they've been so weird because, David Shaw was great, but then around COVID time, it almost seemed like he just phoned it in because where they had made their bread and butter, being salty in the trenches, great O-line, they were still recruiting good ones and just not developing them. And they had a lot, and they just didn't get any better there. And in the end, the writing was on the wall that he wasn't going to be there.
Remember when they had a tight end room that had 3 guys going to the NFL all at the same time on the same team? I believe it was Fleener, Hooper, and Ertz all at the same time, or it might have been somebody else there. But they had multiple guys all going to the NFL out of one tight end room. How insane is that to have one position group, especially a position group that people by and large overlook outside of Stanford and Iowa, and you've got 3-4 guys going to the league. So, this is not to disrespect any of these opponents because, like I've said, if I'm talking about most of these games from a pessimistic standpoint for NC State, I'd say Virginia's a toss-up. I'd say Louisville is a loss. I'd say Wake Forest is a toss-up. I'd say Cal can be a toss-up. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't see a world where Richmond should give you a problem. I think Vanderbilt, you can count that as a loss or a toss-up, and I'm fine with that.
And I've said this to Corey before, too, when I do Locked On Vandy. If I'm an opponent looking at Vandy, I want to play them early in the year before Jared Curtis has a lot of experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys have him week 3. Yeah.
You're trotting out, and I say this phrase a lot, you're trotting out a young man that was slow dancing at prime a couple months ago. Yeah. I'm okay with trusting him to be a little immature with his decision-making processes. I'm okay with trusting. And even last year, Vanderbilt's offense was the story. Defensively, they were not known as a team that's like, hey, we're going to possess the ball. We're going to make it an ugly, dirty rock fight, and we're going to win the game. No, their defense's thing was bend but don't break. You're going to give up 30 or so. That's all right. We'll live with that because this little 5'8" sawed-off quarterback is going to work enough magic to get us into a position to win it late, which worked out more often than not. I don't think that you can trust that same kind of sequence with a true freshman at quarterback, and especially when you're talking – that's going to be what, his first game ever against a Power 4 opponent?
Yes, because their games before that are Austin Peay and Delaware.
And again, I'm giving you Vanderbilt as a loss or a toss-up.
Yeah,
and you still walk away with at max 4 to 5 losses or toss-ups. So again, this is a very favorable schedule. The scheduling gods have shined their light down on NC State. If you watch Avatar, this is your Sozin's comment. You've got to – the Fire Nation needs to power up and do what they got to do because this opportunity I don't think is going to come along in terms of having your head coach back, your offensive coordinator back for his second year, your quarterback coming back for his third year starting. In the world of NIL and portaling and all that, you've got all that. And even if you said, well, hey, losing Hollywood Smothers is going to be a huge blow, I don't disagree with you at all. But you're just replacing him with a back who, when he was asked to start in his place, just went off for 200 yards, 200 total yards. So, there's a world where NC State finally makes the jump this year. And that's a world that every NC State fan would love to see. The unfortunate part is we've played this game before. We feel a little bit like Bill Murray on Groundhog's Day, where we're like, Devin Leary and Demi Sumo. Oh, yeah, this is it. We got Thayer Thomas. He's getting better. Emeka Emezu. We got Devin Carter. This is going to be the team. This is going to be the squad. And then bit by bit, little by little, you look up and you're just like, wait, how did we lose that? Wait, who's hurt? Wait, what's going on? So ultimately, you know,
I thought it was going to be when you guys got Brennan Armstrong in 23, but he just didn't do it. Yeah.
man, you want to know the crazy part about it? I thought it was going to be after Brennan Armstrong. I thought Brennan Armstrong was going to be a good bridge quarterback, and then MJ Morris, quarterback of the future, steps in and makes that. I was a huge MJ Morris believer. I'm telling you, other than his mama and his auntie, who are very active on Twitter, I was the number one member of the MJ Morris fan club. Gave him all the respect in the world. And even when he redshirted, I talked to a member of the family who told me, hey, he's still coming back to NC State, you know, even though everybody in their mama said, hey, that's BS. There's no way he's coming back. And even though logically there was a part in the back of my mind that said he redshirted, he's not coming back. I still trusted the word of the family member I spoke with and said, oh, yeah, he said he's going to come back. So, you know, it feels like, again, Bill Murray and Groundhog's Day, you keep waking up and seeing the shadow every single time. That's what it's starting to feel like in terms of the chips are in your favor. The chips are in your favor. You still got to play your hand the right way. And you still got to go out there and not hit on 20, right? Like you still got to do the little things right. And we just can't seem to get out of our own way at times.
Yeah. And now we're on college number 4 and backing up Arch. So, yeah.
You know, that is, to me, when I look at NC State and I look at the players who transferred out, I would simply say MJ Morris is not the exception. He's the rule. By and large, most of the players that have transferred out of NC State, it's the exceptions are the guys that went on to have success. The KCs of the world, right? Concepcion went down to Texas A&M. He was phenomenal. Lyndon Cooper went up to Pitt, has been very good there for them as their center. He was very good. I believe he might be in the league now. He was very good as their center. He was one of the guys.
Oh, no. He transferred to Vandy for this year. So he'll be at Vandy.
Oh, well, all right. But you see what I'm saying? He's one of the rare ones. He's one of the rare ones that's had success and that has kind of moved up in the world for himself. But for the most part, you know, Devin Carter was another guy that I believed in. I was like, hey, he's got a big body. He can run. He can break tackles. He's going to be great. He's with Emeka Emezi. He'll figure out the concentration drops. He never figured out the concentration drops. And so, you know, that drop against Miami, that's what I mean by you don't need guys to go legend every game and do these crazy, insane things that just are otherworldly. Sometimes you just need to do little stuff right. And people forget in that Miami game with the drop from Devin Carter, Tyler Van Dyke was not Miami's starting quarterback that year. It was the quarterback from Houston who had gotten hurt. He got hurt. And Tyler Van Dyke came in as their starter, and he lit us up. He just lit us up in a way that he didn't do to anybody else for the most part that season.
Was it Derek King? Derek King.
Yep, that's who it was. So, you know, this is a situation where, again, NC State, if you're saying, what's the prognosis, right? If you're saying, hey, Ken, you're the doctor, what's the cure for NC State's 9-win cap sickness? I would say consistency. I would say doing the little things. I would say just beat the teams you're supposed to beat.
Yeah.
Nobody's upset at you. Nobody's going to turn over the table if you lose to Notre Dame. Now, granted, they should have been more competitive against Notre Dame than they were last year. They looked like a deer in the headlights, but nobody's going to be upset at you for that. What people are going to be upset at you for is losses like the Boston College loss on senior night a few years ago, losses like the Virginia Tech loss from last year. That's the stuff where people are going to sit here and say, why are we investing in this? Why do we believe in this? Why do we show up year in, year out and say, okay, this is going to be our year. We can do it this year. And then, you know, we do that. Why do we show up and say, again, nobody last year after the Miami game said Doeren was supposed to win that game. Again, should they have been more competitive? Absolutely. But nobody said, hey, Ruben Bain and Mesidor should have been light work. Yeah. To whom?
Yeah.
Whose light work were they? But not a college football offensive line.
No.
Every offensive line that they played, look at the playoffs.
Like
they
them.
destroyed
Yes.
it. They destroyed it. So nobody's mad at you there. It's just the games that you're supposed to win, you've got to win them. And Doeren has done a good job of winning the games that he's supposed to win. But to get to 10, you need to do a great job. You need to do a darn near spotless job of all the games we're supposed to win. Let's go win.
Yeah. So looking at we've talked about Bailey quite a bit. Is Will Wilson going to be that backup, or Hudson, the guy that transferred in from Coastal? Who's going to be the backup there if there's an injury or something happens?
That's one of the more intriguing. That's one of the more intriguing position battles going in to fall camp, because it doesn't feel like you have a true sense of who the backup quarterback is going to be. And we all know Will Wilson and what he does, right? I believe he scored 4 touchdowns or so against the Dirty Foot Club with his leg. I don't know what it is about backup quarterbacks for NC State, but when they see those light blue helmets come out the tunnel, they're instantly like, oh, did I just turn into the greatest quarterback of all time? Be it little Ben Finley many years ago, who, shout out to that guy. He went on to transfer to Akron and do good things there and all that. Well, be it Will Wilson last year with the 4 touchdown performance. It's something about those backup quarterbacks for NC State that they're just like, this really is my Super Bowl. I need to break out the smelling salts. I need to be my best self. But we're all kind of looking at that, saying who's going to be the backup. Okay. As of right now, I'm going to say I don't have insider information on who the backup is going to be. My personal preference would be for Will Wilson, because that would mean that he's developed his arm and his ability to read defenses at a higher level. Because to me, last year, he looked like a deer in the headlights at times when they actually throw the ball. He looked a little bit underprepared and overwhelmed by the moment when asked to throw the ball. But with that being said, he was a true freshman, right? Freshmen make your freshman mistakes. If we judged every player who came into college football by what they were their freshman year, there would be many a great, many a Heisman winner, many a Bednarik winner that we look at and say, no, you're a bum. I remember when you played Clemson your freshman year, you were looking at the back of receivers' heads like a good barber. I can't believe you're a Thorpe Award winner now, right? So it's a situation where I believe that Will Wilson's ceiling is higher, but I believe his floor is a little lower than the young man from Coastal.
Okay. Then running back wise, we've talked about a few of them. Duke Scott's back, Darius Johnson, and then Davion Goss portaled in from the rivals, as you said. So,
absolutely.
And he's a guy who didn't get a ton of carries last year, but did show some flashes for them when he was playing. So that room looks pretty solid. I mean, you got depth there. You got multiple guys that can carry the ball, guys that'll be receiving threats as well. Looks like even losing Smothers, it still looks like a pretty solid room.
And you haven't even mentioned the fact that Jonathan Paylor may be in that running back rotation as well. Who knows? But who knows? He could be kind of in that weapon territory, like how the Jaguars used to use Denard Robinson, where it's like, what is he? You don't know the position. You don't know where he's going to be at. But I'm going to tell you, I think the combination of Duke and Goss is going to be just so tough for ACC teams to deal with, because those two are not big, imposing backs. They're not 220, 6'2". They're not that profile that you look at. Like, you remember when Boston College had Andre Williams and A.J. Dillon in the backfield, and you knew just looking at them off the bus, you were like, oh, okay. It's going to be a day.
You got to strap the helmet on today with these guys.
But bring your big boy pads. Matter of fact, put some pants under those pads to give yourself a little bit more weight. You don't look at those two and think that, but when you turn on the tape, when you actually watch both of those two guys run, I don't think that they could wiggle their way out of a paper bag. But when you get those guys going downhill, it's just so – you're just like, wait, how much does that kid weigh? Because guys are just bouncing off of him. And that contact balance, which is something that is so spectacular for those types of backs to have, because normally when you think about a guy with great contact balance, again, you think of that Derrick Henry, Sean Alexander archetype. They're not that. No. And yet it's so hard to knock them off their square. And the beautiful thing about Duke Scott, not only does he have incredible contact balance, he also has breakaway speed. He also has that, if I'm even, I'm leaving. Hey, it's been real. It's been fun. Go ahead and give me a reservation for 6, please. So, he and Goss, I think that the running game is in good hands. And the even more interesting part about it, CJ Bailey, if he can eliminate the negative plays from last year, because he has plays where you say there's not 10 other quarterbacks in the nation that can do that. And then he has plays, the negative plays, like the one that comes to mind for me in terms of one positive and one negative. I want to say it was against Memphis. He rolls out in the bowl game. He rolls out to his left and ends up throwing the ball cross body to the right side of the field and hits Teddy Hoffman for like a massive 30-something yarder after he broke a sack attempt. And it's just like, you don't see that every day. Everybody does not have the ability to break that sack, number one. Number two, the wherewithal to keep your eyes downfield and not look at the pass rush. Number three, the accuracy to hit that pass under duress. And not everybody has that. But then you look at the Notre Dame game, and there was a play where he's like kind of drifting, and he's eluded some pressure, but he's drifting. And when I say he had to be at least 5 to 6, he was closer to the sideline than the tackle box.
Okay.
And somehow he throws an interception back across his body on the sideline where legitimately every single NC State pundit was confused. The coaches on the sideline were like, just throw it away. There's nobody, So if you can eliminate those boneheaded plays from CJ, which I expect will happen, he's getting older, he's getting more mature, he's understanding the ramifications and the impacts of those. I think you're going to look at a special dude. And then you bring in this running game. If it can be serviceable, you don't even need what Hollywood and Duke gave you last year. If you get serviceable out of the running game, combined with what you're going to get from CJ Bailey in this passing game, I think your offense is in for a special year. And I liken this back to another North Carolina team, Wake Forest, when they had Hartman. They went to the ACC championship. Not with a great defense. No. With an opportunistic defense. Was that the year? Did
they play Kenny Pitt
they did, that year? The fake slide year. That was the fake slide year. And so all they had to do was just come up with enough turnovers. Get a stop here and there, just in the right moment, get you a stop, and you'll be okay. I think if NC State's defense can do that, I think on the defensive side of the ball, if Harvey and Isaiah Shirley and company can be, good at rushing the passer, you're in for a very good year because the linebacking core seems to be improved from last year. And granted, Caden Fordham was great, but I think Kenny Soares was playing out of position a little bit last year. Hopefully, I wish him all the best in Michigan State. Hopefully that works out for him. Okay. And I think Sean Brown going down so early in that year, it hurt them because they didn't have the depth. They did not have a situation where you could afford to have a catastrophic injury like what we had to Sean Brown, where it's early in the season and he's gone. That wasn't the case. And so you saw a lot of bad run fits. You saw a lot of guys who were, paralysis by analysis, and they just weren't moving until offensive linemen are already in their lap. And you really can't have that at this level of football. So the linebacker core should be improved. Defensive backfield, the jury's still out. You lost some talent. You gained some talent. Some of the talent that was still there got a little bit older.
Yeah. King Mack could be a good transfer from Penn State coming in.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. I've heard nothing but spectacular things about King Mack. Mm-hmm. But they're in a similar position to where the linebacking core was last year, where you're one catastrophic injury away from being a totally different unit. Okay. If they had more depth, I would say I feel good about this defensive backfield. I feel great about it. I don't see it to where, hey, King Mack goes down, we're good. We're not okay. Or we're not worried about it. If everybody stays healthy, that'll be one of the more surprising defensive backfields in the ACC. If we have one guy to hear a wrong tweak or pop or needs a cast for a little bit, we might be in some trouble in that defensive backfield.
That's good to know. Yeah, because looking at the depth charts, it seems like that's the position where you return the most, compared with D-line and linebacker. But there also is the least amount of depth, which you're talking about.
With the defensive line, you do return a lot of guys who may not have played a ton, but they did show positive flashes, right? You talk about Chase Bond as a guy who has not played a ton, but when he did play, he was very effective. He was always where he was supposed to be, and at times was pretty good at reestablishing the line of scrimmage. So although you don't see it on the stat sheet, oh man, Chase Bond was just a game changer, you turn on the tape and you see what he is. And there's other guys like that in that front seven. There's not the same presence of guys that even if you take away the statistical analysis and just watch the film and say, okay, what's the coverage? What do you think you should be doing? Oh, he did his job on that play. You just didn't know it because a good defensive back, 9 times out of 10, if he's doing his job, it's like an offensive lineman. Yeah. You don't want to hear his name. If you hear his name too much, either he's D'Angelo Hall or it's a very bad thing.
Yeah. That's a good point. One pickup you guys did get that'll be good is our best D lineman, Katron Evans for Marshall, going down there. So that'll
heck of a run stopper,
yeah.
heck of a run stopper, and that's what I mean by we're not returning a ton of guys who have shown a lot at NC State, but there is depth and talent there. Like I think that he's going to be a really, really good run stopper. I think that he's going to be spectacular in that role, and you kind of need that because last year was Brandon Cleveland, who was consistently penetrating, who was consistently reestablishing the line of scrimmage, who was consistently disrupting what offenses wanted to do. And even though some people look at last season for him and say it was a down year statistically, well, he still got drafted, number one. Yeah. So let's think about that for a second. And number two, if you turn on the film, this is what I mean by the linebacker play at times last year was mind-bogglingly bad because there were times where Brandon Cleveland would reestablish the line of scrimmage, give the running back nowhere but one place to go, and our linebacker would say, I like being behind Brandon Cleveland so much. He wears such nice cologne that we both want to be in the same gap. Yeah. And I'm going to trust that the ball won't jump over one gap to where I should be. Oh, no, the ball did jump to that gap. Well, I guess we got to try it again next time, pals. So I think that Allen's going to do a fantastic job of filling in that role.
Yeah. Dyson from Tulane will be a good pickup on the edge.
We
had double-digit sacks last year, and that was a big one too.
Oh, and you know the best part about him? He shows up in the big games when it matters.
That's good.
When the lights are the brightest is when he's at his best. That gives me a little bit of concern because the thing that I said about NC State is not you got a lot of big games on the schedule this year. You got to figure out you got to show up for the small ones. But what he did last year, if he can emulate that, and as the season goes on, if you do the little things right and you win those games, all of a sudden, those last games down the stretch, even if Florida State don't have their head coach, still a big game. Yeah. Even if Mr. Hudson, Coach Belichick and crew are out at UNC, it's still a big game because you're looking at, this is double-digit wins on the line. Yep. If you just beat this team that is your biggest rival that you've beaten 5 times in a row, who knows? Yep.
The one that surprised me was in looking at your guys' stats on D, how Fordham had double the tackles of everybody else. Was it like when you were watching the games, was his number being called pretty much every play on defense? Or was it that he was the only one that stayed healthy?
Not only was he the only one that stayed healthy out of the linebacking core, but again, I think that some of those guys were just playing out of position. And again, this is with all due respect, because I want to make this clear. I've made it clear that I transition the way that I speak about players now because they're getting paid real money now. So it's a different thing than when I first started. It's a different thing. But even with that, I do want to practice fairness. And in all fairness to Kenny Soares, I think that he would be really good playing primarily attached to the line of scrimmage. I don't think that he was fit to be an off-ball linebacker. I don't think that was where where his bread was supposed to be buttered. We tried it again and again and again, and we saw the effects again and again and again of, hey, that's not his game. That's not what he's supposed to be doing. Can he do it in spurts? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is that where the bulk of his time is supposed to be spent? No. So it was a combination of he was the only one healthy, and let's just be honest, and this ain't to call out Kenny Soares, there were other linebackers as well that were just like, I don't get it. And I'm not going to call out anybody here, but there were guys in our linebacking core last year. Normally, when you think about a college football player at the ACC level, especially for the linebacker position, you can say this is his specialty. He's really good at rushing the passer, or he's really good at coming downhill and filling the hole. He's really good in pass coverage. He's a fantastic in man coverage. Nobody can get away from where in zone coverage, he can feel where guys are. There were multiple linebackers last year that I'm like, what is this guy good at? If we turn on the tape and say, what does he do particularly well? With the exception of Cade Fordham and the few games where we had Sean Brown, and even Kenny Soares, when he was attached to the line of scrimmage, when he was rushing the passer, you could see where his value lied. Yeah. A lot of these other guys, I'm sitting there scratching my head saying, okay, so we keep putting him out there, and he keeps looking lost in the sauce. He just keeps, It's like watching a newborn giraffe trying to walk before mama stands him up and says, all right, this is how you do it. It's tough.
When you say that, the guy that immediately comes to mind, who, another college guy the last several years, Harold Perkins at LSU was like that. He was a true freshman playing on the edge. He dominated. Then they tried to make him a weak side backer, and he was dropping back. And that is not what he was good at. You aren't playing to their strengths at all.
And that's Harold Perkins is a great comp because people said he's too small to play edge full time. But here's the reality. If that's where the bulk of his value lies, you can tell him, hey, I want you working on this thing constantly. I want you sharpening this weakness constantly, but we're going to play to your strength. I'm not going to try to fit you into a round hole, even though you're a square peg, just because your size profile says thing X, Y, and Z. There are going to be aberrations to size profiles, and you are the aberration, brother. You may be a smaller guy. You are really good at striking the peck. You are really good at locking out in the run. You are really good at finding ways to turn that corner and tell that quarterback, hey, brother, how you doing? Me and you were about to have a conversation while the ball's still in your hand. You ready? That's where I think Kenny Sewell should have been. So, again, it's not an affront to him. It's not disrespect to him. And it's not a disrespect to Harold Perkins because Lord knows I was a huge Harold Perkins guy. I said if at any other school besides LSU, at any other coach besides Brian Kelly, he's one of the top 5 edges in this class. Unfortunately, they just didn't use him that way. And so that's how that cookie crumbled.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for him. But now let's move a little bit to the rest of the ACC this year. So we've talked about, the Wolfpack schedule, but in looking at the teams we expect to compete this year, I feel like compared to the other P4 conferences, this is the one where there's one team we're going to put at the top, and that's probably going to be Miami right now.
Well, yeah, but now hold on now. Let's be fair. If Texas Tech's quarterback wasn't a gambling degenerate, they would also be in the situation where there's one and there's everybody else. Unfortunately, their quarterback is betting on Johnny Cueto balls and strikes. Whenever you find yourself betting on the Johnny Cueto ball or strike, go call that number. Go talk to the lady.
Betting on one of my favorite ones. He was betting on the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Have you no shame? Have you no shame? Whenever you're betting on something involved with lemonade and Franks, it's time. It's time to.
It is.
It's time to go ahead and walk away. But I do agree that the ACC is a conference where you have one team and everybody else is kind of there. But I'm going to warn you about that. Do you remember last year? Perchance?
And Miami has, especially on both sides of the line, they have a lot to replace
and
on O&D line.
And see, and this is why I'm glad I'm here. This is why I'm glad I'm here with a fellow ball knower, because I have told people time and time again, and I'm glad that we joked earlier about the Marshall flag in the background. I said about Tony Gibson, he's a wonderkin with linebackers. You could give him a sentient Roomba, a paperclip, and one and a half star linebacker, and he's going to make at least one of them an All-American, right? And that was my running joke about him until something similar to that actually happened and the defense dropped. Because although you may joke about a guy being so special at developing, he's so good, you still need certain things in order to make it happen, right? In Miami, they're replacing so much, but they're not even replacing so much in a way that it's like, this is something that he's a really good player. What Bain and Mesidor did in that playoff run, they won games by themselves. You cannot say any word that rhymes with Bain around Marcel Reed. If you tell him, hey, we're going to need to put an IV in you, we just need to get your vein. Bain, where is he? That's how bad they were in that young man's grill all last year, all into the opening round of the playoff last year. And so I look at this and I say, they're not being asked to replace an average right tackle. CeCe Marino was the first offensive lineman off the board last year in the NFL draft. So they're being asked to replace guys that are superstar primo guys.
And you might have signed the top tackle recruit in the country. A true freshman isn't going to be at that level right away in power conference football. I think Jackson Cantwell is going to be good. You're not going to be ready right away.
And here's the thing. If Jackson Cantwell proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But Jackson Cantwell is not even the guy I'm most concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that offensive line requires a high degree of cohesion. Yeah. And these guys are all new, have not played together. The offensive line from Miami last year, look at how many starts 3 or more of them had together. Look at it. They had played together forever, basically. So this was a power of friendship plus all of these 5 stars, all of these great transfers, all of those things. They worked in tandem to come up with what that team was last year. So I'm a little bit concerned. And if you look back to last year, going into the season, Clemson was said to be the most likely candidate, not just to win the ACC, but to be the first ever 16-0 national champion.
Yeah.
If you would have told everybody Clemson's going to end their season playing Penn State in the postseason,
who was another team everybody said was going to be in the playoffs too last year.
hey now, you know what they would have said? Oh, that's a national championship game. Oh, that's in the playoffs.
Yep.
They played in the Fenway Bowl.
Yep.
Them boys was eating glizzies, and Brendan Sorsby was probably betting on it. But in all seriousness, Miami is head and shoulders better than everybody else on paper. The problem is Miami's always been better than everybody else on paper. When they have to strap on those cleats and strap on those shoulder pads and make it happen, that's where things get a little dicey for Miami. And you figure, hey, Mario Cristobal has turned the corner, but I try to be consistent if nothing else. And the same way that I say of Tony Elliott, I'm not sure if you were a one-year flash in the pan or if you've sustainably built something. I'm going to ask the same question to Cristobal.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen sustained success. So I'm like, this is crazy.
And if you relative to expectations, last year was his first year where they exceeded expectations.
Exactly.
They were very whole. They won 10 games the year before, and they lost in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. The year before that, they were 7 wins and 5 wins. Last year was the first year where they were better than we thought they would be, and he was kind of that way at Oregon too, to be honest. So,
and that's my point. That's my point. So it's not just about Miami and their divisions. We obviously know all of the talent in the world. We know that. That's a team that, there's no conference that you would drop them off in and they'd be any worse than on paper. Second, maybe top, tied for third. There's no conference that you could drop them off in. They'd be worse than that.
No.
However, that's on paper. Last year's Clemson team on paper, was there a conference that you could drop them off in and they'd be bad? And yet, that was a team.
If we would have had this conversation last year, we would have said Clemson was 1 or 2 in every conference.
But watch this.
And Penn State too.
Yeah. But watch this. Clemson needed a comeback at home to beat the Troy Trojans.
They did. I had the Troy guy on a few episodes ago. Yeah.
That's the nature of this thing. We can all say that we know what's going to happen, and this is the conventional wisdom and all that. The reality is, not only are we dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds here, you remember how you were when you were 18 to 22. You were good some days, bad some days. You were in bed on time some days. Other days, you were drinking a Four Loko in the farmhouse, frat house, and you were doing things that you can't say on air without somebody coming to get you. Like, you did what? So, the reality of this thing is, even beyond Miami, you get into the territory of SMU. Well, Kevin Jennings, spectacular quarterback, and obviously Darian Mintz is the cream of the crop in terms of quarterbacks. And he brings Cooper Barkate with him and adding in the Malachi Tony and all that. It's clear why they're number one. Mark Fletcher as well. It's clear. But then you go to these other teams and you say, well, you know what? If there's any quarterback not named Mensa in this conference that you would say that guy's a team or that guy's a quarterback that your team not just wins with, they win because he's there. Kevin Jennings got to be your number 2. He's got to be.
Yep.
I love JKS. I think he's in that conversation.
Not even being biased, I might put Bailey a second after Mensa.
But you know what?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm fine with that. But you can't take Kevin Jennings out of the conversation.
Not at all.
Is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, he's perennially in that conversation. And so you combine that with what Rhett Lashley has done. I mean, last year was the first time in 3 years, or in 4 years rather, that they were not in a conference championship game. 2 straight American Athletic Conference championship appearances. Go to the ACC. How will they fare? They don't have the bodies in the trenches. They don't got the big fella. Well, how about we go to the ACC championship? How about that? Yeah. How about it? Last year being their first year. And mind you, even last year, Kevin Jennings led a heroic drive against Cal that if their defense could have held up for less than a minute.
Oh, I was watching the end of it. It was, yeah.
You win that game. D. Jesus was the guy all game. You know, if I'm the defensive coordinator, granted, I'm not the greatest defensive mind there ever was, but at a certain point in time, you put a guy's number on the board and you go to the defensive back coach, you say 22. Wherever he goes, we have somebody with him. If he goes on a date with his girlfriend, make sure that we butter his popcorn. If he goes to the bathroom, make sure one of us is prepared to shake.
Yeah.
He needs to have an escort at all places like the Secret Service. It didn't happen.
No.
And then boom, you get what you get. So, you know, Kevin Jennings, spectacular. He is what he is. And there's always that conversation of him being there. And Louisville is the wild card because I'm as big of an Isaac Brown fan as anybody. I think that kid, he is the Flash. He is the closest thing that I've seen to what Chris Johnson was at his prime with the Titans.
Yeah.
He has the ability he has that contact balance that is abnormal for a guy his size, but he has a burst of not only acceleration, but top end speed it's otherworldly. It's otherworldly, and people are talking about him as an early second round, late first round pick. And I'm saying he's going to save some GM's job. If a GM in the back half of the first round gets him, that means you are already a good team. And you just got him. And mind you, if you talk about, you know, quarterbacks who are not proven or who don't look good, what coach would you have him go to besides Brown? Brown rehabs quarterbacks from the island of misfit toys community college and turns them into guys that we're like, Jack Plummer did start in the ACC championship game, didn't he?
And I mean, look at Purdue since he left. They fell off a cliff. He took them to the Big Ten title game 4 years ago. That was pretty impressive.
And mind you, this is the most interesting part about Brown and the Indiana saga and all that. You talk about, you know, him leaving Indiana and coming back home to Louisville. That Indiana program before him and after him has been complete dog water. Complete and utter. And then you look at the situation that he's at at Louisville. My only gripe with him, get a young quarterback and develop him. These 1 year rentals, you do a great job of working it out and having them run your system. Get a young dude.
I was kind of surprised that Lincoln Kienholz from Ohio State's the guy they went after. But
it's
also one of those where, like, I say I would have done something different, but I also know well enough that, hey, Jeff Brom knows quarterbacks. Maybe I should trust him.
And listen, he's one of the few, right? Like if I see Tony Gibson going after a bunch of 2-star linebackers, I'm not gonna question him. I mean, hey, Tony, you've earned that right, brother. Yeah. Go get whatever you want in linebacker. I trust you to turn it into something good.
I like it. Yeah. So we're approaching our hour here. I always ask 2 questions of the guest as we're ending. And I think the first one, I probably know the answer. In the ACC, what coach is on the hottest seat right now?
Fun fact, the first ever coach to be named #1 in the ESPN coaches hot seat rank preseason back-to-back, Mike Norvell. He obviously has the hottest seat.
Yep.
His seat is scorching. It is a supernova. He needs to win at least 9 games to cool it. Really, 8 games somewhat cools it off, but it's still hot. 9 games. All right, you put out the fire, but I think Norvell is by far #1.
Is Belichick #2?
I don't think Belichick's seat is hot.
Okay.
I don't think it's hot because, and this is not even me joking from like, I'm going to take off my NC State Cartier glasses. I'm going to put them down to the side here.
Okay.
The reality is North Carolina doesn't have great expectations for football, so that seat is never really like, all right, do something right now. Right now, when it comes to basketball in North Carolina, that's a different situation, right? Like you got to be on your P's and get on your Zoom every day, 10 a.m. Be on that Zoom.
Yeah.
Football is like, I mean, cool, I guess. I mean, you know, so I don't think the Bill Belichick seat. I think his seat is hot. I wouldn't say it's the second hottest in the conference.
Okay, I follow you. That's an interesting take, though. Yeah, I don't know who second would. He might have been my guess, but I'm not sure. An interesting one.
I think it's Bill O'Brien at Boston College.
I was going to ask
the way that he's done it. He's been so bad. I don't see how you bring back multiple 2 to 3 win seasons and say, I'm serious about winning. I very seriously don't, especially in a sports town like Boston, where all of your damn teams win championships, all of your pro teams,
now,
all of them.
He did go to a bowl game in year 1, but they were so bad last year.
So atrocious. So atrocious.
And I don't know that their roster doesn't look great this year either.
So again, a school like that where you in a major city where all of your teams win championships, it's easy for people to just say, yeah, sure. Anyway, Drake May, what's going on, brother?
Yeah.
You all right? Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah. Now, the next question I always ask is one that, because the hot seat one, some people expect, this one is different. What coach in the ACC do you think with a really good season or two could get vaulted to a blue blood job or a job at a bigger school?
Tony Elliott is one more season away from getting a huge check and leaving Virginia.
If he keeps doing that, does he get the Clemson job when Dabo retires?
1,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
1,000,000,000%.
It would make sense.
You cannot argue for anybody else to get that job when you fully understand the context of you were at Virginia football, brother.
Yeah.
Last time they were good, was it Thomas Jones that was a running back there, or Kevin Jones?
No, Kevin was Virginia Tech. It was Thomas Jones. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was one of those Joneses. That was the last time I remember turning on the TV saying, Virginia football's good. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Al Groh, I mean, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're looking at a situation where you have this team that has risen from the ashes, in essence.
Yeah.
And at a place that is not, you're not thinking of Virginia in terms of football and saying, hey, you're the guy, but you have to out-recruit James Franklin for players in that area. You have to do that. Yeah. You have to beat out all of the NIL stuff and all that, where Virginia's a basketball school. They're going to get a disproportionate share because they've done so much compared to you all. And beyond all that, again, the off-the-field stuff. We can all pretend like it doesn't matter. It does. It does in the grand scheme of getting a team back together after moments like that. Yeah. And you put together potentially 2 of the greatest seasons in your school's history back-to-back. I am guaranteeing you, as sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, and I don't believe that this will happen. But if they can, by some outside chance, get to 9-10 wins this year, the schools that come knocking for Tony, he won't be able to say no. He won't be able to.
No, I think that's probably the other one I could see happening. If Wake has another good year, and I think they'll be solid. If Luke Fickell gets fired at Wisconsin, Jake Dickert's a Wisconsin guy. He could get that job.
Here's the interesting thing about Dickert and Fickell and how that will work out. One of the biggest critiques of Fickell and one of the biggest things that kind of upended him was this thought of no more A-gap power stuff. We're going air raid. And that's what almost killed him. And then you bring in Dickert, right? Another guy who's going, that's his deal. But here's the most interesting thing about Dickert. I say this all the time. Without looking, how many games last year did Wake Forest win?
I thought it was 9.
They had the quietest 9-win season.
But that's one of those. I wouldn't have known that when I was looking back, like in the summer doing my rankings a couple weeks ago. It's like, holy shit, they were 9-4.
Yes. They had the quietest 9-win season. When you think about football schools in the state of North Carolina, right? You had a 9-win season, and somehow you didn't end up as the biggest story in North Carolina football.
Yeah.
Because Duke goes on to win an ACC championship, despite the fact that they had a loss to Tulane and that Illinois drubbed them and all those things. It just so shook out that
you
way.
Have and you have TMZ over with the Tar Heels last year with Belichick.
Hello? And here's the thing. NC State, I was at that game, by the way, Wake Forest. Y'all need better food for the media. I'm a big fella. I'm going to show up to eat, okay? I'm going to show up with an appetite driving all the way to Winston-Salem from Raleigh. It's not that far of a drive. I'm just a little fat. But in all seriousness, that was a team that if you would have said some of the things that happened to them happened, you would say, oh, they don't have great quarterback play. Okay, but they're going to win 3 games tops. Ashton was not great. No. Their starter was not great at all, and they still found a way to get 9. And people say, well, it was an effect of them having a weak schedule. I don't give a damn. That is Wake Forest football.
Yeah.
Winning 9. So
before Marshall, I was at South Carolina. I saw Robbie Ashford for a little bit, and it wasn't promising.
Let me tell you something. Oh, it was promising, all right. If you were a defender, he was going to promise to get you the ball at some point in time. I don't know when, brother, but just stay open. I'm going to find you. So the reality is Dickert is a constantly rising star. He took over a Washington State team that I believe he was the coach who replaced the guy who didn't want to get the COVID shot or something like that.
Who is now the old coordinator at Cal.
What a time. What a place to be if that's your thing. Yes. So, I look at this and I say, Dickert could be it. Elliott could be it. Yeah. Fran Brown was on that trajectory before last year. He was on that trajectory that everybody knew based on that first year with Kyle McCord. Oh, man, one more of these. One more of these.
And he had the trump card, too, of I was with Kirby Smart for years. I know what it takes to win a national title. Yeah.
Listen, it was right there for him. It was right there. He was, in the words of Obi-Wan, you were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join it. Yeah. You were supposed to destroy the losing ways at Syracuse, not join it. But, it kind of worked out that way because of the quarterback injury and all that. But I'm going to tell you, Tony Elliott is, to me, Tony Elliott and Dickert, because I think Dickert's a great pull there. Yeah. I think those are the two coaches. If you look around the rest of the conference, most coaches, even if you have a great year, where does Narduzzi go if he has a great year? Yeah. Where does Dabo go?
Yeah, Narduzzi and Dabo, they're both probably in their retirement jobs. An interesting one, Brent Key, because he's at his alma mater, and that can make it tougher to leave. Same with Brom. That can make it tougher to leave sometimes.
I'm going to tell you something. I've spoken to both of those gentlemen on the record and off the record. Okay. I think both of them love where they're at. Brom, his entire family basically is royalty in Louisville. Because remember, his little brother went there. Great quarterback. He has, I believe it's his daughter or his niece went there. Great volleyball player. They royalty there. There's a world where I could see you throw a number big enough and he says, I'm going to lead the program with my little brother. We're in good hands. Yeah. Key, you don't understand the full context. Key took over that job, or not you, but a lot of fans don't understand the full context. Key took over that job as the interim coach when Collins was fired. Yeah. He went on to win more games as the interim coach than Collins ever did in a full season.
Yeah.
Key then says, all of us were pissed at every game we lost down the stretch. I said, what? And then he gets them up to being a top 10 team this year before they go play NC State. I'm telling you, I think you're going to have to pry. You're going to have to literally snatch Brent Key out of there, kicking and screaming to get him to go because he loves that place. And I think he's very cognizant of the opportunity that was handed to him, unlike another offensive line coach up at somewhere else that pulled out butter knives on assistants and whatnot because he can't keep it in his – we're not going to go there. Anyway, Brent Key loves that place a lot. He loves that place so much. I think it's going to be real tough to get him to go.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I like that. And I like the context you said with both him and Brom. That's good to know. But we've reached the end of our time. Kent, now I had a fantastic time. This was a great episode. Want to thank you for being here. Everybody out there listening, I'll tag Kenton, the Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack, so you'll be able to follow him easy. And take care, everybody. And thanks again for being here.